Hi, my name is Michael Hing. I'm the host of the OPL, and you have found yourself on a Friday evening at an eSports panel at PAX. Have you guys had a good day at PAX today? Ooh, we're very tired because our lung capacity is not good. I understand. I feel the exact same way. So let's just get straight into it, shall we? I'm gonna becoming a professional eSports player with. These are not in the same order, but Tim Carbon Wendell is closest to me. Simon Swiffer. Papa Marcos? All good? Yep. Nathan Rippies Mott and Jake Spawn Tiberi are all here. Ladies and gentlemen, can I ask you to give a round of applause and welcome our panelists? So we're going to be chatting about a few things today. A very, very brief history of esports in OS. We're going to be talking about how to become a professional esports athlete or e-athlete. We're also going to be taking your questions. So there are going to be mics here towards the end, and we'll get into that. So do think about what you might like to ask. But let's kick things off with a picture of PAX 2013. Let me start with you guys as the panel. Who was here at 2013? Any of you? Jake, Swiffer. Jake, how has PAX changed in 3 years?
Well, I was in the crowd in 2013, so it was really actually huge in 2013 because it was the first RIOT event that we'd ever put on in O. So big people standing around. I mean, it was much more convention style. There were no seats or anything like that, just lots of people crowded around and lots of lanyards being handed out by Atlas and myself. So it was a little bit different back then.
And Swift, when you were here in 2013, what capacity were you here as?
As a player?
As a player? Is your mic working?
Apparently not.
Luckily, we have too many mics on stage, so maybe we can just...
yeah, mine's working. Do you want to try one?
Can we bring that across and then just kind of everyone shift up one?
Yeah, I was here as a player during 2013, and
Which team were you representing in 2013?
Exile 5.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't think they exist in League of Legends anymore.
Mate.
They do?
They're in the OPL, Simon.
Challenger series.
I'm
not really aware of what happens in the Challenger series, sorry. And yeah, I played for them, and then little did I know, but it would start a long tradition of me never winning anything at PAX. So yeah,
so you've been down at the Logitech booth today. Have you been losing today as well?
Yeah, O2.
O2?
Yeah.
Well, good on you for trying. We were at the IWC 2013 at Gamescom. These are just some images I'll just scroll through quickly. Winter 2014. Tim Carbon Wendell, I see you in that beautiful picture there. In the bottom, I guess, left-hand corner. Tell us a bit about what you were doing in 2014.
Yeah, that was the last time I felt happiness.
No. All right, moving along. Gamescom 2014, the OPL Final 2015, which is last year. Was anyone here at Luna Park last year for the OPL Final? Yes? Some very polite people, yes? I guess, you're in Melbourne, you don't travel, it's fine. And this is the OPL Final 2016. I know 3 of you were there. Rippies, were you at the OPL Final in 2016?
I was there as a spectator, unfortunately.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah, because these we had the sort of I don't know if you guys how deeply you follow OPL. I assume you would. Otherwise, why are you here? It was Chiefs and Legacy, the sort of El Clasico. Jake and I were there on the analyst desk. But I feel like that's just the history of. We've caught you all up. You're up to speed. It's fine. Let's move along. So I guess what we're talking about is how we moved from 2013 to 2016, and that's 2017. What we're going to be doing. I feel like we should get some questions. So this is training regimes. So I guess I'll start with the pro players on, and then I'll ask Jake for commentary afterwards. Down the line, starting with you, Tim, what is a day like for you in terms of training? Or what is a week like for you in terms of training? Because it is a full-time job.
Yeah, it is a full-time job. At least it was for us. Not for every OPL team this year, but it definitely was for our guys, including myself. Average week for us usually involves at least one OPL game, which was, I think, on a Monday or a Tuesday. And every single other day is scrims and solo queue. So we play on average 6 hours worth of scrims and then probably, I'd say roughly around another 6 hours worth of solo queue, about 10 to 14 hours a day. There's outliers. Some people practice a lot more, some people practice a lot less. That's a usual day for us. Scrims, solo queue, a lot of VOD review. Sometimes we do media stuff, team building activities on the weekend. We like to do those. I think those are really important, kind of breaking the week up. One of the big things about living in a gaming house is you kind of get into a rhythm, which is both good and bad, because when you're in the rhythm, like you often find that you're playing really well, but at the same time, it's easy to lose track of time. And I find that the more breaks you give, the better you're able to kind of categorize what you've learned, and not that you play for 3 weeks straight and then you start doing the same mistakes you were doing 3 weeks ago because you've now found a new problem that you need to try and solve.
Yeah, I hear taking breaks after scrims to kind of stand in a circle outside really helps to break up like the monotony of scrims, right?
Yeah, no, standing outside, dude, I'm all about standing outside. Like, there's nothing worse than playing a scrim and then just sitting there. Like, you need to get outside, I think. I think that's good advice for anyone. Probably especially some of us here, because I'm one of you. But getting outside is really important, I think. Especially just getting some sun. Like, so many of the guys just literally do not want to get up, and it's so hard to get them out. I don't know about what you guys do. I don't know if you have access to outside.
No. We're pretty much kept like pent up in more or less like prison environment, and just forced to play because we have to come first, and if we don't, I mean, like, we'll lose to you, and that's punishment enough, right? So yeah.
Yeah, so we were, as Tim was saying, we were sort of, well, this year at least, we were we didn't have the team house, so it was more, I mean, our players were technically still full-time, but they're still playing online. We sort of didn't have the luxury of being able to, VOD review in person and all that stuff, so it was more just over TeamSpeak, which was sort of our virtual communication office. So
is that likely to change in 2017 for you guys?
Yeah, so next year will be, as with most of the teams, we're moving into team houses to accommodate for the live OPL matches that are in RIOT Studio in Piermont, Sydney. So yeah, it's definitely going to spice up the OPL a bit. Because there's a lot more stuff you can do there, so it's going to be very exciting.
And thank you. And finally, Jake, you had a very short career as a coach of the Chiefs. So tell us a bit about what your kind of role was there before you kind of full-time committed to casting.
Yeah, and wow, I don't have one either, do I?
No, just maybe try that one at the end. I don't know why these mics aren't working.
Hello.
Hey.
Did that work? Hello?
Yeah, it does work.
All right, cool, it does work. All right, cool. So as a coach, it was really strange back then because as Rippy was kind of alluding to, a lot of it was done over TeamSpeak, which is hard to coach players over TeamSpeak, honestly, because it's very hard to get respect in a virtual environment, first of all, with...
even when you got, in between scrims, you just have, you're trying to coach the team, and then you have the players on Twitter, like, straight away, not listening, not taking in, what you have to say. So, in person in the team house, it's sort of like, you can see them, like, you can see this person who's on Twitter, well, say, for example, Jake would be, trying to tell them what, they're meant to be doing in that game instead of, the bad stuff. And
that was the other thing that, like, we really struggled with is there's a big difference now between coaching and between being an analyst. And I think that I was a pretty good example of someone that was a good analyst, but maybe not a good coach because as a person, can be pretty blunt and direct with some of my criticisms, which people find entertaining on casting, but not very much so if you're playing on a team. So I think that one of the biggest challenges that a lot of the guys face going into gaming houses, and I'm sure teams will face next year as well, is you have to find smart people to surround your team in and, that can teach and can point out, the most accurate mathematical way to play the game. But then you also need people that, like, I guess this is why I really respect Carbon, because he's one of the best at it, that is a good people person and, is able to rally the troops and, able to keep morale high and stuff like that. So I really do think that they're two different roles within the system, and when I was a coach, it just didn't exist that way. So that was one of the biggest challenges, honestly, of, taking a team of 17 to 19-year-old guys back then through professional video games. It was pretty hard.
When you never win, raising morale becomes a pretty important skill to learn.
Yeah.
Speaking of rivalries, just so you guys know what's happening in the audience, the slides were made for a panel about esports, and now we're trying to focus. I think you're probably more interested in how to become a professional esport athlete, right? Is that kind of the vibe I'm getting from the title of the panel? Yeah? You don't care, do you? No, you just... most of you are here because your bus doesn't come till 7. That's fine. Well, let's talk about rivalries then. And speaking of never winning... Only
funny if I get to do it.
So,
He brought it
Okay,
up.
you don't get to make fun of me. Only I get to make fun of me.
I apologize, Carbon.
I can probably kick this one off, however, because the rivalry that was born out of winter is probably like one of the best rivalries I've ever seen. For those that don't know, Chiefs used to win everything. They were team immunity back then.
Yeah, used to.
They just picked up. They had just picked up a superstar coach in myself, and
Most unsuccessful tenure of the organisation.
Going very confident into the final, where they hadn't dropped a game, I don't think. And then a cheeky team called Vanguard Ascension absolutely destroyed them over 5 games and pretty much crushed Swiffer's hopes and dreams. So
I think it was a bit more closer than absolute.
they strung it out and let them, really feel that burn. But from then, even though it has been in recent history a little bit more one-sided, and I say that with as much respect as possible, I'm sure every single time the Chiefs do have a look across the rift at Legacy, they do remember those faithful games back in 2014.
No, we try not to.
I mean, how does it play, Simon? As someone who has been involved in this rivalry for a number of years now, how does it? I mean, is you say no jokingly though, right? Like, like Legacy are sort of the team for you guys to beat in many respects, right?
Yeah. So
is that how you guys view it in terms of your preparation?
yeah, I think it was actually a really important lesson, like losing to Legacy in 2014, 2 years ago now, and and it was
No one
important.
laughs at your jokes. You have to laugh at your own.
And it was important because going into it, like, I think everyone on the team pretty much felt untouchable, and no one was really putting in a lot of effort at the time, I think, because we actually thought that we couldn't lose. And I think it was like a massive wake-up call to us to, start putting effort in again. And then the next tournament, we are placed worse than we did in that one. So I guess it wasn't exactly the wake-up call we needed, but it was a start. And then from there, I think we just kind of tried to build on our strengths and never let that happen again.
Tim, when we talk about rivalries, is it something that's kind of organic, or is it something you guys decide as a team? We're going to take these people down. How do these things evolve for you?
I don't know how rivalries, like generally, I don't know the answer, but I know for us at least, it was more organic. We never, coming into it, we were not. It wasn't like we were like aiming for them or anything like that. We didn't have anything against them. In fact, I think most of us were friends with most of them at the time.
You say "were" in past tense.
Well, I mean, people get older. At the time, and there was no real rivalry, and I think part of that was they didn't really see us as such, and we didn't really think that we were that good either, to be honest.
Yeah.
We were just there for fun, but we managed to win, and then it kind of became a thing where a lot of people were saying, oh, like it was a fluke or whatever, and we didn't follow the scene too closely before that, so I wasn't really even aware that they were supposedly that good. And then the next...
Turn up casually and take a win.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. No exaggeration. And then it was more the aftermath that kind of created the rivalry for me, and then the next couple finals after that definitely cemented it.
Excellent. All right. Well, let's move on now to a quick rundown the panel in terms of sponsorship stuff.
Actually, sorry, can I just continue on that?
Yeah, sure. No, we'll go back.
Yeah, so I just...
You want to throw some more shade?
Yeah. No, not so much of that, but I just remember why. So after we won in 2014, we were still on friendly terms, we thought at least, on friendly terms with the Chiefs. Like, we didn't have anything against them. Like I said, we were there for fun, and we won, and it was a lot of fun for us at least. Maybe we didn't realise, just how hurt they were. But we boot camped immediately afterwards, and the Chiefs flew up to Sydney to help us out, help us prepare for wildcards, because it was still a really new thing. It was the first year that OS actually had their own server. So we were super new, and everyone wanted to see us do well. So Chiefs fly up to boot camp against us after the thing. Anyway, so they spanked us basically for that week. They spent the entire week spanking us. And then just before we left, I'll never forget, one of the Chiefs players, as we left, we said our goodbyes. We'd just spent a week of training with these guys. And one of the Chiefs players turned to me and said, as he was walking away, no less, but said, "You guys suck."
you want to? Are you going to keep that a secret, or do you?
Yeah, no,
wanna
I'm not
name
going
and
to say.
shame
I'm never going to say who that was. But one of the Chiefs players said that, and it was kind of at that moment where I was like, all right, you know what? I look forward to playing you again. That was the moment for me, at least.
Fantastic. Actually, I just think I want to ask as well, Jake. Actually, from the perspective of a caster and someone who's trying to craft narratives throughout a season, do rivalries? Do you feel like it is good to lean on them and to hype it up, or do you feel like each game should be equal and special in your beautiful mind?
No way. Yeah, no, they're definitely special. I think that we genuinely had. Well, what you have to do is you have to take an even deeper look in, because what happened when we first started the OPL as well is that Legacy fell away slightly. They were the third best team, and then Nathan's team, the Direwolves, jumped up and challenged for that final as well. So what we kind of had is this like three-way tie. So we have what I call Anzac Day all the time, which is Legacy versus Chiefs. But then you also had during the regular season in the last couple of years, Direwolves beating both of them. So it created this really dark horse, like the two top dogs, and then a dark horse story. From a narrative point of view, I mean, it helps out a lot. The games self-promote. I mean, the players genuinely feel like they want to go in, and I'm sure Nathan can speak to going into every single game against these two guys as underdogs and winning a fair share of them as well. So I think that having those kind of rivalries and those kinds of, especially when they're in a sportsmanship manner, actually really helps out. And, it helps from a viewership point of view, as I'm sure you guys are aware. I'm sure you guys tune in when Legacy and Chiefs play each other. Also helps from a casting point of view because, we get to see how much it means to the guys, and you get to see pretty much the 2-3 best teams in Oceanic going at it. So it really does help that our top teams have stayed on top for so long and have stayed competitive with each other for so long when it looked like it was going to be dominant. I mean, at the end of the day, Chiefs have won their fair share, but it never really has come all that easy apart from that one. Sorry, mate.
I mean, in terms of rivalries, it's always been like, you got Chiefs, Legacy, and then like Dulles is always, as Jake said, the dark horse. I like to sort of call it more the middleman. We're sort of friends with both sides. We have ex-players on both teams. So that's sort of how I always look at it there. But the rivalries always come about because they're in the finals, right? So if you happen to be playing, with each other in the finals a lot, and say for us, Legacy, it was the semi-finals for 3 splits, and then Chiefs was the last semi-final, which we unfortunately lost to. But yeah, so we sort of have a rivalry with sort of just trying to fight for the top spot, really, from Darwell's perspective.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to sponsorship. Do you guys want to talk about sponsorship? Yeah.
It's up to you.
Yeah, I feel like sponsorship's just like, hey guys, spreadsheets, But I guess the kind of key point is, this is in many ways one of your revenue streams that allows you guys to do this full time, right? So from a player perspective, do you how much in OS, because the organizations are smaller than they would be in EU or the US, you guys would have to end up doing a lot of this stuff yourselves, where otherwise it would have an organization behind you to do it, especially with you, Carbon, right?
Yeah. Mine's a little bit self-inflicted though.
Because you're a control freak, or because...
Maybe, no. It kind of ended up that way, and then I kind of found myself in a position where I didn't feel like anyone else would do a better job, really, than myself. So I thought, well, I'll just do it then. But no, look, it is really important. I think the work that the orgs do. I don't think it's a surprise, really, that us and Chiefs, and one other team, were the only teams that got. No, sorry, I'm talking about the Hellions, not Nathan. It's not Nathan. Although maybe I should have. Anyway, no. So there was only 3 gaming houses this year, and I think the org plays a really big part in that, and it's a really obvious example of a way that an org can have a direct influence on your performance.
And I mean, when you have a look at these 3 teams especially, I mean, the reason that they're becoming so iconic is that you have like things like the Asus Gaming House, that Legacy threw a big day for. And then you had the LG launch with Direwolves, and their faces are all over PAX at the moment. And Sybil's double dipped there somehow, Rippy. I don't know how that worked out. And then you have the Logitech booth, with Chiefs all over it at the moment. So I think that it is a good example of, how partnership does come into it. And, whilst they are sponsors, the relationship goes both ways. I'm sure you can speak a lot to it as well at the moment, Nathan, since that you're going through it.
Yeah, well, obviously sponsors are a big part of, any sport. Traditional sports, sponsors drive a lot of the revenue stream. In esports, it's more so the sponsors rather than the traditional sports. But yeah, well, getting, say a mainstream brand like LG, for example, that we had sort of a lot of attention, not just to our team, but sort of esports in general. So, so yeah, it was really good for us. But yeah, it's sort of same with Tim. I think Tim, it's a bit harder for him because obviously he's a player and, sort of manages the sponsorships and the team side. But for me, I stopped playing due to, focusing on that stuff. So, so yeah, it's obviously going to get bigger over the next couple of years. But yeah, definitely sponsorships are a big part of any OPL team.
What do you reckon, Simon?
Oh, I was just going to say that maybe you can take something from Rippy there and start, managing your team properly instead of playing.
Oh, God.
All right.
I think I need to be sitting in between these two.
He's just so much bigger than him. That's all it comes down to.
Who knows how good I would be if I didn't have to run it.
Unlocked potential.
Super Saiyan Carmen.
All right, so I think we should now, this is kind of where we're going to end before we go into questions, and I really want to dive into the path to being a pro. So all four of you have managed to kind of score, I guess, dream jobs for you, right? Playing video games and talking about video games professionally. Let me start by asking, just quickly down the line, starting with you, Tim, did you, I know esports has kind of come out of nowhere for people our age, but at what point did you kind of think that this is something you wanted to do for your life or for your career? Have you realised that yet?
Yeah, I'm not sure if
on
I've
now.
had that moment yet. In the back of my mind, I still think about, when I hear the word career, I think about, what I'll be doing in 10 years' time, 20 years' time. And, if I'll be jungling, I don't know, probably not. But no, for me, I didn't even know what esports was. I had no idea it existed. I had never heard of it. I played video games for fun, I guess, but then I didn't even really play online games. I was a Nintendo kid growing up. I just played Zelda and Super Smash Brothers and that with my friends. I never really took it seriously. And then League was just something that I picked up during uni. I don't know. I was just doing it for fun, and then I happened to be good at it, I suppose, and I got invited to play on the team, and I thought, well, I've never done that before, but it sounds like fun. It could be good. And we did that, and really, I think the only reason I ever found out what esports was because I found a little bit of success in it early. If I had lost in 2014 when I first started playing, I probably would have just stopped and I don't know what I would have done, gone to work, I suppose.
Got a real job.
Yeah, well, I had finished uni. I graduated university just before I started playing, just before my first tournament. And so I was actually working while I was doing placement after uni, though, at a regional health centre. I did health science, for those who are interested. So I was working at a regional health centre, and I kind of had to choose, because they offered to keep me on, what I wanted to do, because I couldn't travel. I couldn't travel all the time and work full time. So I thought, well, we'll give esports a crack, I suppose.
And, I kind of had a similar
Here we are.
moment because I was playing StarCraft at a pretty high level and was never committed to, but was thinking about moving to Korea and having the conversation with your parents about, hey, I want to play video games full time, and just trying to explain that to them is terrifying. But with my dad was like, that's not a real job. I was like, don't worry, if StarCraft doesn't work out, Dad, I've got a backup plan, stand-up comedy, all right? It's going to be fine. I've got this sorted.
Well, he must have trusted you, because that's a pretty funny joke.
Yeah. It was, January 17, my comedy special comes out on the ABC. Please watch it. All right. 8 p.m. tonight, me, Dave Cowan, Bob. Anyway, Simon, let me ask you as well about your road from being, I guess, a casual player to kind of being captain of an internationally touring esports team. You just came back from Paris. You're about to go to Oakland for IEM. Like, at what point did you kind of commit to wanting to do this full time?
Well, I first got like offered to join a team back when OCE didn't have a server, and it was I think, yeah, at the time, like all the players now have moved on and they've retired. And I remember getting offered, and I was just thinking, like, I just thought to myself, oh yeah, this is pretty cool. Like, I'll just do this and then just continue on with the rest of my life and everything. And then slowly, as esports like developed in Australia, I had to commit more and more time to it. And it was this year was the first year where I stopped kind of studying as well as playing, and committed to it full time. And it was only really this year that I really kind of considered myself a professional gamer, just because it was the first year that I actually had to sacrifice something in order to pursue it. And it wasn't like an easy choice or anything. And I told my parents as well that like you did that you know, I had a backup.
What was their reaction?
Mine wasn't stand up though.
Yeah. What was your backup?
I was just like going back to uni.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe it's not. Yeah. Maybe it's just as bad as yours.
Well, what was your parents' reaction when you were like, "Hey, I want to play video games"?
My mum and dad, they did that thing where they were like, "Oh no, yeah, like we support you," but then.
But like through the side eye, and
they had like really dour expressions, and I'm like,
we support you, I guess.
I'm just like, I'm just a disappointment. No, but, no, though I think that it was mainly like when I started winning and like money started coming in that they saw it as like semi-viable, and then being like relatively successful in it as well has helped push that agenda further.
Sure.
And so they're fairly happy, I think, as long as I do go back to uni eventually.
Eventually. You could be a mature age student who asks questions during class.
Can't wait to be that. Just be obnoxious all the time.
Never take his backpack off.
Yeah, no, they're quite happy with it now.
Yeah, excellent. Nathan, you founded a team.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's pretty simple for me. So, as you know, everyone in this room, you know, we sort of started off playing games, and esports wasn't really a thing, as Tim was saying. But back in our day, I sort of had a different path. I was sort of forced into League of Legends, so I was playing a couple of other games at a very high level. And
what were you playing?
So back in the day, World of Warcraft Arena was like a big thing. So I was almost a rank 1 gladiator, which is like the highest level back in those days. And I was sort of playing with Americans. And then I moved to another game called Guild Wars 2, and that was meant to be like sort of the next biggest esports. So I started following esports around League of Legends Season 2. And that was when I was like, oh, okay, I could sort of replicate this for Guild Wars. And that unfortunately didn't work out, so then I had to just go to the biggest game, which is League of Legends. And
so you're a reluctant professional gamer.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a good choice, obviously, you know, with where I am now. But
so you like actively like chased esports?
Yeah, I was actively chasing esports as pretty young. So yeah, so League of Legends, I just was forced there to just play. Obviously, you know, the most money you could make was from League of Legends. So I was like, all right, I just got to go there. So so I started at the end of. I was playing casually, but started playing more seriously to the end of Season 3, and you know, I got Challenger in like a month and like Rank 2 in another 2 weeks. So yeah, I basically just used my skill set to and a champion that these guys up here will know, Udia. I'm a bit of an Udia extraordinaire, so that was sort of like the fastest way I could.
Is there such a thing?
Yeah, one of the few, apart from a rival that's always brought up Trick 2G, but I'm like 20 times better than Trick 2G. So yeah, that's not even it's just a straight up fact. So yeah, and then I basically sort of, you know, had a year. I played at the Autumn Regionals, and then I was part of Team Dignitas when they came to OS, and then I was sort of, you know, not so much kicked, but I was sort of a one-trick pony still from UDA, so I didn't really know how to jungle properly. So I mean, then I founded my own team, and I had 3 accounts almost in top 10 of the solo queue, so it was easy for me to get other players, and I sort of built the team, and then just chucked a name on it, and that was Dials, and got a logo, and yeah, 2 years later, we're here now.
Excellent. All right, before we move on to Jake's, I want to chat to Jake about what he's doing. Can I just get a sense of how many people want to ask questions? Just give us a hand up, I guess, Is there a lot of people? There's like 3 people. All right.
Actually, before we get into questions, can we get some context in this room? How many people here follow OPL? If you could put your hand up.
All right. So, what? Who else is here? I don't. Are people here just because friends drag them along because they're interested in esports? Maybe we should have done that history of esports thing at the start that I skipped through. This is the rails have come off, you guys. Do you want to start again? No, that's fine. Okay, cool. So we might do a couple more. We might do a bit more of a panel chat before we go to questions because not a lot of people are wanting to ask questions. But Jake, you've got kind of an interesting history because you, and I hope I'm not stepping on any of your anecdote, but from what you were working in insurance. You had like a pretty good and successful career going on. And then you bailed to kind of work at Riot.
So I'll tell you, like, you've heard 3 successful stories, so I'll tell you my story, which is just rife with failure. So what happened is League of Legends came out, and I was going to university to do biomedical science, and I didn't go at all, so not even one class. And I played a lot of League of Legends, and I worked at McDonald's full-time, which was great.
Keeping the dream alive.
Yeah, keeping the dream. So I thought, you know what, stuff that, take 2. So I went back to university and I did history and literature and I did a dip ed as well, so double major. And I got 2 years into that and I was playing and I wanted to be a pro player. So I was looking at these guys and I'm like, I'm going to be a pro player as well. So I got picked up by a team. It was sequential back then and went on to be Frenetic Array. And we were on the North American server still. So huge ping. Like I'm talking, we're playing on 250 ping. So ping was the best equalizer because I used to play Maokai, which as everyone is aware, doesn't really require that much skill. So there's no one flying around on Lee Sin at this stage destroying me. I'm just playing Maokai. So I played a little bit and then I found out I wasn't good enough, which was a little bit heartbreaking. So I stayed at university and then, you know, Atlas was one of my good friends from that and he asked me to cast through the back of that. A team called the Chiefs asked me to coach. I coached 2 tournaments. They're the only 2 tournaments the Chiefs have ever lost. So then I stopped doing that as well. And I was actually dropped out of university for a second time as well, so I didn't finish any of that. And I remember the reason I dropped out of university was I was reading a book. It's called The Crying of Lot 49. Do not read it. It's 150 pages of torture. And so when I used to read books that I couldn't actually get through because I'm a quick reader, I would run myself a bath and I would read the book in the bath. And I dropped the book in the bath because I fell asleep. So I walk into my parents' room, like in a towel with a soaking wet book, and I'm like, I can't do this anymore, I'm dropping out. And Dad was like, all right, you can go work in insurance because he's an insurance agent. So shoehorned me into a corporate gig.
So this is complete nepotism then?
Yeah. Anyway, so that went on for a couple of years. I was shoutcasting at the same time, and then I ended up leaving that for Riot Games. So pretty much the way you become a shoutcaster, in my opinion, is be bad at everything else you want to do in life.
Yeah.
And then
no, you make the switch. Yeah.
Eventually, you will find that one thing that you're actually okay at.
It's a process of elimination.
100%. So I found out what I didn't want to do, and now I know what I do want to do. So it was one of those things that, in all honesty, I really wanted to be a pro player, and I hung around teams a lot. I spoke to a lot of people that were very high level at the game, and I could never press buttons as well as them, but I thought I could think as well as them. And I can also talk. So that's where shoutcasting kind of came into it for me, because it was just double play-by-play back in the day. I don't know if anyone remembers it, but the way a colorcaster came around, at least in Oceania, was Papa Smithy used to play in tournaments, get eliminated really early, and then Pastry Time would make him sit on the desk while Pastry Time yelled. So it was actually just an ex-pro player. And using the term very loosely, like incredibly loosely, that is kind of how I got into shoutcasting.
Yeah. As an interesting tidbit, I don't know if you want to talk about this in a room full of strangers, so feel free to shut me down. But I know, for example, you were very committed to the game before you began working at Riot. And one of the things that happens when you start working at Riot is they tell you how much money you've pumped into the game.
So Riot Games is really good like that. They sit you down at a computer at something we call D-Noob, and you know, you wear a Teemo hat because that's cool, and they put you in a full glass room. It's like a fish tank, and everyone walks past and they can see the new guys, and they let you know how much you've spent on the game. And when I was working full time, I used to want to give back because League of Legends was a great community, and I really did love it. So I used to put about $50 a week. Jenna, block your ears. So I'd spent over $3,700 on this game.
That's a lot of Big Macs.
For example, they used to, when I started, we don't do this anymore, but we used to give unlocked accounts. And the guy looked at me and he was like, do you really want to use your unlocked account on this one? Because I feel like you're like 75% of the way there. You just finish it off yourself. Of course, we don't do that anymore. We pay, people don't know this. We play like players, so we have to put money into it as well. But yeah, that's what I was doing beforehand.
All right. Well, let's, I think, move it on to questions. So we've got mics set up there and there. If you want to make their way to those microphones to ask questions. And I found the best way to kind of make this work, we'll start with you, sir, but the best way to make this work is trying to introduce yourself, and then kind of ask the question, and also just sort of either direct it to the whole panel or just say who you're asking it to. So we'll start off with you, sir.
Yeah, right. Hello? Yeah, cool.
Hi.
Whatever, you can hear me. Yeah. Basically, I don't watch esports, I don't even play League of Legends, but what I am interested in is how much effort you put into your physical and mental health.
This is really interesting. Well, let me start with you, Carlin, because I've spent some time, a very limited amount of time at the Legacy House, and you guys actually have a sports psychologist who comes and works with you, right?
Yeah, so I personally take mental and physical health extremely seriously. Being a health sciences graduate, I think it also has a pretty big impact on performance. So at Legacy, I do my very best to be able to provide an environment where players ultimately have the best tools to take care of themselves. I'm not about, I don't force people to do anything. I'm not forcing anyone to go to the gym. I'm not forcing anyone to eat right. But the food I provide generally is healthy. I make gym access easy. And we did engage a sports psych this year to help us through some of the mental things.
Swiffer or Rippies, do you guys want to get in on that at all, talking about mental and physical health?
Yeah, I mean, I mainly agree with Tim there. Yeah, it's just physical and mental health is just crucial to performance as a player. Engaging, so sports psychology is an interesting one because no one's really cracked. Over in North America, it's sort of becoming more popular now. But I think that we'll definitely see over the next couple of years, like eSports, psychologists, and sort of the merge between traditional sports and eSports. But yeah, to answer your question, yeah, it's really crucial to any player. If you want to play at the highest level, yes, and that's sort of the way we're going to crack, that international stage. So,
I think we already have.
Yeah, well, yeah, technically,
Who are you playing against?
but not really.
And I think, just beyond that, even beyond playing, I think that physical and mental health is important if you want to do anything at the highest level. So
Absolutely, yeah.
Shoutcasters all go to the gym together as well. And the biggest thing about esports that I will point out is it's not something that you can't get injured in. I've seen so many players that have bad wrists. I mean, Tim's been through it with Tally. Jat, who a lot of people know internationally, Joshua Jat Leesman, he's one of the casters. He's just had his wrist completely reconstructed and had to not play video games for 9 months. He had tendonitis, he had all of his tendons shaved off, and he's had to do strength conditioning exercises to get back into it because he used to play like a dinosaur, in his words. So I think that a lot of the physical and mental aspects of League of Legends are important across your whole life. I don't think you can ever neglect it in that regard.
Especially mental, I got to say. I think mental is more important than physical. Physical, of course, is important, but ultimately it's not. It's more of a mental game than it is physical, so I think mental health is extremely important.
Simon?
Yeah, I was just going to share an anecdote. So Tim mentioned it before, but back when they beat us in 2014, and then we proceeded to kind of just stomp them afterwards. I meant like the boot camp. Yeah, I did. I meant the boot camp.
To be fair, we didn't have our mid laner, but
yeah, okay. Anyway, what RIOT did was provide us with a sports psychologist as well during that period, and that was probably actually the most constructive time I remember being the most constructive era of, or it was an era, 2 weeks that we managed to have as a team, and we got a lot sorted out, and we progressed as a team incredibly quickly, and since then we haven't actually revisited a sports psychologist, and we probably should, but it was very, very helpful, and that's what I can attest to, I think. And with the physical side, most of us go to the gym. We still have a few spaghetti arms on the team, but That's fine. We're trying to convert them, and
Yeah.
yeah, that's it. That's kind of my.
I want to just share a very, very quick thing from my perspective as well. The new FIFA came out, right? And I played it for 13 hours straight, just grinding seasons because I'm an idiot. And I got up at the end and tried to move my neck and couldn't. And the next day I had to drive to Canberra to do some stand-up gigs. And so I was like doing stand-up, like it was fucked, right? And then, so the next day I was like, oh, I'm going to go get a massage done, like to maybe loosen up the muscles, right? And so I turned up to the massage and there's this very small Thai lady. She's like, oh, how did you hurt your neck? And I freaked out and just straight up lied to her. And I was like, oh, I was playing basketball. Like, I haven't played basketball in 20 years. I don't know what I'm doing, right? And then she's like behind me and like holding my shoulders and neck. And she goes, oh, really? Usually this kind of injury is from too much computer. And I was like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. Just like straight up sprung. Anyway, sorry. That's, thank you for the question. And we'll move on to here.
Hi there. My question is, I've recently moved over here from Europe, and from what I understand that you guys are a wildcard league. Do you guys ever feel that you're put down by the other leagues because you're a wildcard league and looked down upon?
Does anyone want to volunteer an answer? Well, why don't we go to everyone on this, because I feel like you guys are pretty united on this front.
I actually think that's why wildcard teams are able to almost consistently take games off of teams at Worlds, because we're just kind of chronically underestimated.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
Yeah, we
that's
just
what I
saw
think.
like one of the CIS teams, Amazon Luna, just take down a top Korean team.
Well, I mean, like ANX, like in the most recent kind of Worlds, managed to make it to was it quarterfinals?
Yeah, quarters. Yeah.
So
And Inspeed EDG as well.
yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And it's kind of really funny because as a shoutcaster, having seen it firsthand, talking to the teams, they kind of like, wildcard became this slur where like it meant second class, where really what a wildcard means is like anything can happen. And that's why ANX was so fun to watch, because like they didn't even know what was going to happen in half of those games. Like you talk to those guys, and no, they're legitimate. They're like, I think it was a miracle in one of his interviews was like, if you don't know what you're doing, the enemy doesn't know what you're doing. So
Just
that's his quote.
straight up fire strategy.
He's not saying that like he doesn't like understand how to play the game. It was just like they had gone that deep into the tournament that they didn't have a game plan like, oh, once we get to quarterfinal, we've hidden all these picks. It was just like, all right, what's the next thing that we know how to play? What's the next thing we know how to play? They're banning out Brand. Okay, well, let's move on to Zyra. Let's move on to this. So like, they really did reclaim it as like wild card, as in like the blue shell that just gets launched up Mario Kart to take someone out.
Excellent. Thank you for your question. Let's go over to Isa.
So I'm just curious, how much time did you put into games before you went professional? I mean, Nathan here said he went Gladiator and WoW. I assume that would have taken a very long time.
Well, I mean, obviously I was still in school, so I was limited to the time. You know, we're looking at 4, 5,
Pesky
6
education.
hours
Yeah.
a night, and then say weekends would be like 24/7. So
Oh, yeah.
like it was a lot of time to put into it, obviously. But yeah, I mean, there was nothing really else. I could have done homework, but that was not fun. So
Do you guys want to get in on this?
No, I'm okay. I'll pass on this question.
Carbon, how much time have you spent playing video games? Because you're quite a high-level Smash player as well, right?
Yeah. Before I was a pro league player. Sorry. I mean, I played league since season 1, I think.
Yeah.
So I've been playing League for a while. So I played League, I suppose, for a while before I was a professional player. And I had phases. You know, I stopped playing for 6 months at one point because my grades were slipping. And then as soon as I got my grades back up, I was playing like 8 hours of normal games on a Saturday afternoon. So for me, it varied a lot. Yeah.
But but across the board, it takes a lot of time to get.
I think
definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to be
fairest
good,
rule is like as much time as we could possibly fit in. Like I did other things like work, did martial arts and stuff like that. But if I was at home, like I was playing video games.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like anything though. You need to put in the time. Like obviously, if you are trying to get to the top level and you're putting in, half the amount of someone else who's, working harder than you, of course you're going to lose. So.
Yeah. Put in the effort, and apparently drop out of school. No, don't do that. Absolutely do not do that. That is not. Can we get a question from this side, please?
Hey, so my question is kind of directed towards anyone on the panel. with the Oceanic scene, how it is going into 2017, if you had to pick a role in a sense, have it be bot lane or mid lane that has to be improved the most coming into the next year, what do you think it would be?
So you're talking in terms of Oceania?
Yes, just Oceania.
So like the role in general?
Yeah, if like you think a new star player should come out of a specific role, for example. Or
Yeah. Well, I'll start. I think top lane is definitely the biggest one. I think that our top laners currently are pretty far behind the other roles. I guess Simon and Tim can have their opinion on their roles as well.
I actually think. See, I can only really talk from mid lane perspective, but it's actually really weird in Oceania. And I'm borrowing this from, I think, Spooks, who mentioned it to me as well. And he said that the way that OC solo queue makes you play, because there aren't that many good players, is it makes you play selfishly, right? And then that translates, like, quite evidently into OPL games. And I actually think that's the biggest thing that needs to shift. It's not so much that a new star player needs to come out. It's that people kind of across the board need to get better, and then like only then once like everyone kind of like trusts each other like to an extent, like that's when like you see like everyone's play elevated. You don't really like every role has star players. It's just everyone's just inherently selfish, so it's just unfortunate.
Yeah, and on that note, I think that I wouldn't even pick something on some of those roofs. I would say our coaching staff it's very new and therefore very immature at the moment. So I'd say that the area that, like, if I could pick one area to take us like further internationally or anything like that, it would be leveling up, coaches, analysts, that kind of thing. I think our players are actually good. Some of them are very young, however, but I would say coaching staff.
For me, just to answer your question, support, I think. Not enough good supports. There are only a few. I mean, even in OPL, the depth isn't very large, I don't think, and even less so in solo queue. A lot of Janna mains. Looking at you, Bryce. Outside that, though, just to build on what Simon's saying, I have to agree, and this I think particularly applies to my role. Jungle. If you look at most junglers in the high solo queue ladder, if for whatever reason you're spectating high elo challenger games in Oceania, I don't know why you would, but if you were, you would see that most junglers don't gank so much, and they'll take all the farm for themselves and try to take all the kills, and they'll try to carry. They'll try to hit level 16 before everybody else in the game, and then try to 1v5. And the worst part about it is that it works. And this doesn't work in competitive at all. And so what you have is you have a lot of people who are considered good in solo queue who try to make the transition to competitive and are just dog shit, honestly.
So that's the exact path that I took that Tim is describing right there.
Excellent. Thank you for the question. We've got about 10 minutes left and we've got about 7 people to get through. So let's try and keep answers and questions brief. I apologise in advance. Ma'am, let's start with you.
Hi. Sorry, I have 2 questions. So
That's fine.
One's a general one. What are your thoughts in regards to salary changes that are being implemented and how do you think that impacts you guys? And the second one is, Spawn, have you changed your top player list since World Championships?
Great. Well, let's start with you, Jake. As someone who had a question directed to them and also an employee of Riot Games, how do you feel about Riot's policy?
So first thing, yes, I would change it. Faker is the best player in the world. Smeb didn't do it.
Can I get an
top
amen?
20 list. As far as a lot of the changes in salary goes, I'd actually be really interested to hear from the other guys because I'm very biased. I worked on the other end of the machine for a lot of it, so I don't know. Nathan, you're probably in the best area to answer.
Well, I mean, it's really good. Like, I mean, the way I look at it all the time, is like, so, you compare the other esports, like Riot put the most investment into the game, so it's sort of, you can't really, like, I couldn't say it's bad, so it's obviously going to help and it's going to get better over the next couple of years, but it's definitely the start at the stepping stone. And next year is going to be, but this time next year, the landscape's going to look very differently. We could be looking at, players more moving into the 5-6 figure salaries, pretty soon. So it's definitely a big thing and something that, is just going to help push the scene forward. So, yeah, it's definitely a good thing.
Cool.
Just very quickly, I think the biggest thing with the increase in salaries is just pushing more players to play full-time, even compared to other wildcard regions who've been playing full-time already for a few years. This really was the first year that anyone in OS had done it, and only 3 teams did out of the 8. So I think it's a huge step in the right direction in terms of finally seeing an OS team at Worlds.
Simon, anything? Or?
I can't disagree. Like, money's good, so yeah.
Sick.
Thanks.
Thank you for the question. So over here.
Oh yeah, how you going, guys? Thanks for the panel, by the way, it's fantastic. Just wanted to, in the history of esports, you normally see great personalities not perform super well. Like, the best thing I can think of is like Idra in StarCraft 2 days. He was like a really good personality. yeah, you know what I'm talking about here. Yeah. But he just sucked at tournament. How much, and when we do see people win and do really well, you try to get them on camera and it's like, hey guys, blow up for us, and you know, you got static, sort of not really great personalities winning big cups. How much importance do you guys put on a media personality when it comes to having people in your team? Like, do you go and try and boost any media training in the houses or anything like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, in terms of like, you can't really force a play. If a person's not funny, you know, you can't force them to be funny, right? So, I mean, it's sort of just like say Tim's like, you know, he's the sort of personality, you know, real Aussie, you know, typical Australian.
Careful.
You know, so
Careful.
I didn't want to say it, but you know, so yeah, I mean.
Are you saying that Tim's not good?
You're saying that. Simon. That's what you've been saying for the last hour. So, but yeah, like it's just the thing that, you know, you might get lucky. Some player might have a really good personality that sort of shows off. But I don't think it. I mean, if say a bronze player had an amazing personality, you know, they're not a pro player, right? So it's sort of just, you know, the pro players are going to be themselves, and I don't think you should fabricate it at all. I think it should be real, you know, organic. So yeah, it's just something that we'll see.
I want to jump on it as well a little bit because I've got a rant prepared for this one. I think that a lot of it comes from getting burnt from, you know, some particular areas of the community as well. I'll use Quinn, for example, Ray's young AD carry from the Chiefs. Great personality, like really bright kid. He's confident in his ability, comes out, says, you know, we're confident going into this game. They lose the game, and then all of a sudden, his Twitter inbox is full of, you know, very, very mean, and I use that in the strongest term. Graphic, just not like good. And I think that somewhere along the way, this personality actually lost its path, because I love seeing it. You know, I love seeing the Allen Iversons of the sporting world, you know, yelling at his teammates and talking about practice. Everyone loves Kobe Bryant, these players. And, you know, even people like Jason Ackermanis in the football, he used to do a headstand and freaking kiss the ground, but people thought it was funny, right? And all of a sudden, somewhere along the way, it became, you know, if this happens and it does not go your way, you get very heavily flamed. And I think that that is a big thing that for a 17-year-old kid is hard to deal with. I had the same thing last year when I went into Worlds and I was like, you know, EDG or LGD. Like, Monte Cristo picked LGD to win Worlds last year. I picked SKT to win Worlds. And I got so much crap about it. And I picked the Korean team to win. He picked the Chinese team. So I think that, yeah. So I think the biggest thing that you can do is, you know, when people are willing to put themselves out there, and we still do have great personalities that do it, support them. I mean, be pro something. Anyone can be anti something. It's actually really easy to be anti something, but be pro something. Support your teams. Get behind them, because that is the way the personality actually comes out. If you like an advocate of it, then more people are going to want to do it, and more people are going to get good reactions. Because the OS pro players do have great personalities. Yeah. Some of them are just shit scared to show it on camera because they get burnt for it.
No, yeah. Awesome. Thanks very much, guys.
Thanks. Yeah, you can applaud Jake if you want. Fantastic. I will also say very quickly, if you are someone who has good media training but is terrible at the game, you can have my job. Over this side.
Hi, I have been just following esports in general for like 10 years or so, and not recently, but Riot Games has made it so that you can't have a sister team anymore. How do you think that has impacted the esports scene for League of Legends?
So for clarification, what the sister team means is in the same league or in another Premier League, so that is a top league of the region, you can't have two teams with same ownerships. For example, Legacy can have an A team in the OPL and then a B team in the OCS, but they can't have two Legacies in the OPL. So I don't have a strong opinion on this one. You guys can take it, but just want to clarify.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have. We haven't really done that. Chiefs and Legacy are the ones that have the secondary teams. So I can't really. We don't have the experience really to comment on that.
Yeah.
But
See, the problem is, it's like what you're like alluding to is that because we're a relatively new scene, like the rule came in before our scene was actually properly established, like before that could like sister teams could be implemented here. So it hasn't actually had much of like an adverse effect on us because it never was a thing in our region to begin with. Like we could speculate about how it impacted teams overseas. In like, I think it maybe contributed a lot to the Korean exodus, for example. But at that point, it's just speculation. I can't really like help you anymore. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, to continue speculating though, I think it helps esports in general, depending on what your view of esports is. I think sister teams creates you can kind of create a system where, for those who watched Worlds in 2014, yeah, the two Samsung teams were by far and away better than everybody else. And that's because they had, you know, great coaching, obviously great players as well. But I think having sister teams creates a system where if your management is really good and you can buy up all the good players, and then you have those two teams only scrim against each other, it's very easy to have extremely top-heavy leagues, and that's not really interesting from a spectator point of view. But from a purist League of Legends point of view, I suppose, if you're interested in seeing only the best games possible, like the highest skilled players, like I think the removal of sister teams possibly hurt that. But I think from a spectator view, in terms of like league excitement and you know, different teams succeeding, I think it helps.
Great. All right, we are really pressed for time right now, so we'll try to get to everyone, but let's try and keep these brief. And I apologise, but so.
What do you think are the most important things to do to play consistently in solo queue?
That's good. Let's keep this real quick, down the line, one thing each. What is the most important thing to do to maintain consistency in solo queue?
For newer players, play the same champion only.
Does playing at the same time of the day be important, or?
That's interesting.
Depending on your sleep schedule, maybe. Like if you're playing your one game a day at like 3 a.m., like maybe don't. but
I only play at 4:30 in the morning. That's it.
That's
I
it.
play
And
one game.
I wake up, I set an alarm for 4:30, I queue up, and then I go back to bed.
I go back to sleep.
This might be hypocritical, but like maintaining a proper mentality. Yeah, whilst playing and trying not to tilt.
Yep.
Yeah, I was sort of gonna say like don't be toxic. But I mean, the biggest thing, the easiest way to improve and learn is just to watch the pros and you know go. There's a bunch of YouTube channels, just Korean solo queue, Challenger, Diamond level. Just you know, look what they're building, look at their runes masteries. There's a lot of tools out there. You know, use them. So.
Yep. And Jake, do you have any advice for?
No, that's my advice. I think that the easiest way to get good at something is to emulate. You don't try and reinvent the wheel. Like, unfortunately, your top like AP Tarek is not going to get you to Challenger. Actually, just emulate what good players do.
Not with that
attitude. Then once you master that, and once you are in Challenger, then you can start figuring out what like works for you. But like people have already solved this, right? There's like heaps of guides out there, so just emulate.
Great, thank you for the question. All right, let's rip through these ones on the side over here, sir.
Hey, so there's been a bit of talk about the league format recently. So Double Lift obviously taking a break over the American Spring, and just him talking about how a 10 or 11 month competitive season is just too long. How do you guys feel, considering this is your first year being full-time competitors?
So I'll start with Ripley's with this, but let's again just keep our answers quick, please.
Yeah, I don't really have much to comment on that because we're in the team house or anything like that. But I mean, it's sort of like the burnout definitely exists. It's just sort of trying to work out how to manage it, and it was just something that will take time. I think that you know the TSM schedule that they came across was incredibly. I don't want to say ridiculous, but I can see why he made that decision.
I can actually give you the answer to this one because it's something we've looked at internally a lot. So the problem in League of Legends right now is if you're not a top team, you play for 6 months of the year. If you are a top team, you play in 11 months of the year because all your players are voted into All-Stars. all your teams go to Worlds, which is a month long, and everyone plays during the gap of Split 1, Split 2 for MSI. So what we are trying to solve for is a system that allows that to not be peaks and troughs and for that to plateau out so that there is more competition for mid and lower tier LCS teams and wildcard teams at the moment. And then, that the top teams, they still go to the prestigious events, but they don't have to go to every event. So that's kind of how we're looking at it. It's too many for the top teams because 11 months is too much. 1 month break on anything is going to burn you out. But for a team that isn't, like Unicorns of Love, for example, they're only playing 2-3-month split, which isn't all that much when you think about it.
Cool.
So that's kind of how we look at it.
Excellent. All right, thank you for the question. Let's rip through these last two because we are out of time.
Hey, Adam from okgames.com.au, selfless plug. What do you think now that the major teams in OS are getting team houses? What do you think the next big step to closing the gap between us and NA and EU is?
It's good.
I actually think we covered this before when Jake mentioned the leveling up coaching. I think support infrastructure would probably be the next thing that you need to look at. Because once you have an environment where you can facilitate the players to play to the best of their ability, they won't be able to hit that unless they get the required support. So that's probably it.
I think playing overseas is really important. One of the big disadvantages that we have here is that we're not geographically close to anything. All the other wildcard regions are. So if you look at like Turkey and Russia, they both play on EU West. Japan and C both play on the other Asian servers, China, Korea, Taiwan. I think Brazil and LATAM, I think, are the only ones who play like us on their own regions. I mean, but even LATAM could play on Brazil, which is a bigger region again. We're the only region that is truly alone, and I think getting more teams international and then bringing in what they learn back here will help a lot.
Fantastic. All right, thank you for the question. This is the last question of the night. Thank you guys so much for coming. And
just wanted to know for you guys personally, what players do you look up to the most, like internationally, that you watch to learn from, or even just for fun to watch some of their games?
Mine was always Diamond Prox. Early on, he kind of invented counter jungling, and I was kind of amazed by that, and I've always tried to kind of emulate that. That's who I wanted to play like. But recently, I have to say Pengi. I mean, the guy keeps coming back from the brink of retirement and just putting on an absolute show every time he's required. So he's been a star, I think.
I mean, I think my answer is pretty obvious. I'm just going to say Faker.
Makes sense.
Yeah, like Faker, Bjergsen are the two players that I really look up to. I think just because they're pretty unsurpassed, like they're almost flawless in what they manage to do. Crown now, like I've started to like really look into him as well, just because of his world's performance. It's just like what I really like value in a player, which is like playmaking and consistency. So yeah, that's what I look up. Those guys are who I look up to.
Yeah, Bjergsen for me more is the way he's like sort of evolved and like built his brand and the sort of leadership role that he has with TSM now. Looking at it from more a business perspective, he's built like one of the biggest followings. He's like a superstar right now in eSports. So seeing him come from nothing 2 years ago from Copenhagen Wolves to TSM has been a exciting transition to sort of see him grow. And obviously as some they're still almost a flawless player. So yeah, that's my pick.
Yeah, I'll give you a shoutcaster because obviously I don't play. I look up to Deficio. We both speak English as our second language. I speak Australian. He speaks Danish, and he managed to absolutely nail that. In fact, I got multiple tweets that people could understand him more than they could understand me at Worlds, so that was great. But in all honesty, he's like a scholar of the game. He's probably the smartest person like about League of Legends ever. And he's got really good teaching skills. He can break down VODs, and he one-takes everything. And what I mean by that is you watch a replay with this guy, and he like takes in like mini-map, ward positionings, the setup, as well as like what's happening on the screen in one. And I'm like watching it like 6 times so I can talk about it on the analyst desk. And this guy just like flicks at it once. So he is honestly, and lots of my team got to work with him this time around. He's probably the best shoutcaster in the world right now, in my opinion.
Right. All right, well, the last thing I would like you guys to do is to give a round of applause and thank our panelists for this evening. Thank you guys so much. If you're hanging around, I'm doing a comedy show at 8 p.m. in the Wombat Theatre. You can come, get some lols. Otherwise, are you guys going to be hanging around for a bit? You want to chat with people, or yeah?
Yeah, sure. If you
Yeah, so if anyone wants to come hang, feel free. Otherwise, thank you guys so much, and thank you to Pax and GameSpot for having us. Cheers. Thanks.